Hi there, and welcome to 1080's Career Insights. Today we're going to be talking about the summer job hunt strategy. So I am joined by Gill and Alyson, who you've all seen a few times before, and our new associate, Linda Litherland. So hi, ladies. So as always, please do like, comment and ask questions throughout the session. We really want to make it as interactive as possible and useful for you. So we know that there's not as many people registered today as usual, which kind of is why we think we need this whole topic on summer job hunt strategy, because things do seem to be going a little bit quiet. So I'm going to go straight to Gill with why do we need a summer job hunt strategy?
I think just as you said, things do go quieter in the summer as people disappear on holiday. And it can be quite easy to get disheartened if you're a job searcher because suddenly people aren't there and everything's gone quiet. However, it is also an ideal time to really get things together. And certainly for at the start of your job hunt, many people will say, I'll take the summer off and I'll start again in September. Well, actually, the best strategy is to really focus on things like getting your CV ready and up to date, and starting to think about all the other things to do with your job search strategy. So that when you get to September, when things are livening up, and it's normally just before September, that bank holiday week, when bank holiday Monday is gone, that's when things start to warm up again. So as soon as that time hits, you're just ready to press the button and actually move forward with a well thought through plan, because you'll have several weeks to having thought of it.
Excellent. Yeah, really great comments there, Gill. So anything to add to that, Alyson?
Yeah, I think, people generally think that it stops. It doesn't stop. Hiring is an all year round process. People still hire. It just might take slightly longer to organise interviews because people are on holiday. So that's what we mean. It does slow down, but it doesn't actually stop. So stopping your job search is probably not helpful. But if you are there, it could give you a competitive advantage, actually. Some people may say, well, I'll take, as Gill said, I'll take the summer off and not bother. So there may be fewer candidates around as well.
Absolutely. Anything to add to that, Linda?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. The best way to describe it is, like being on a radar, so you're picking the people that you want to talk to, and even if there aren't any jobs or it's about staying on people's radar so that actually when something does become available, you're the person that's been reminding them all the time that you're there and open and looking for work. And I think that's a useful strategy to carry on and adopt, whether it's the summer or beyond.
Yeah, great point. And I know, like you said, Alyson, there are definitely people recruiting, and I know actually my son recently just saw a job when the closing date's next Wednesday and the interview's next Friday. So there's definitely stuff, and I think, like you say, if you keep on top of that stuff, then you might find things that others just are kind of ignoring because they think we'll wait till September. Okay, so we had a few comments about things to think about. So we have touched on some of them, but the first one here is that it's a good time to take stock and review what's been working or not working. So Gill, is there anything you can expand on there?
Yeah, I certainly think it's time to review. So if you're some way into your job search, it's a time really to check out your CV and see if that's really been working, what sort of response rate you've been getting. And it may well be that it's working really well. But if not, there's a possibility for you to perhaps revamp, revise, look at the keywords in it and have a look. Things like the what's often referred to as your elevator pitch, that sort of 30 to 40 second pitch that you've got. If you're not familiar with using it, this is an ideal time to start practicing it, and practicing it perhaps saying it into the mirror or recording yourself. So it's really thinking about that, and also getting ahead. Even if you haven't had an interview yet, this is the ideal time to start to research the sorts of questions that you're likely to get asked. So you can actually start to think through the answers you may well give, because this all then means it's less work to do when you might find yourself with 2 or 3 interviews in fairly close succession.
Yeah, great point. And there's some really great technology on LinkedIn that can help you with that. If you go to the job search tab, the interview preparation, you can go through then. There are some standard questions, the things like, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses and all of those kind of things. But there's also some really specific ones now. They've got about 14 different categories on things like project management, business analysis, admin support, and they've got that whole range of questions where you can go through, film yourself, and then you get some feedback. So you get told how quickly you're speaking, you get told how many filler words, so the kind of ums and ers and things like that. So that's really, really helpful. So I would definitely recommend looking at that, because until you actually film yourself and watch yourself on camera, it's quite difficult to know how you're coming across. So it's a really great tool there. So Linda, anything to add from your experience on sort of taking stock and reviewing?
I think having some stock sort of examples, you know your career history and the things you've done really well like nobody else. So I think it's about maybe having some, and the types of jobs you might be going for would have similar questions around the types of experience that you're looking for around competencies. So there'll be some key examples that you can demonstrate on what you've done for probably many jobs that you're going to go for. So I think it's about having those off pat so that when you're asked the question, they're there for you. You've practiced them. They follow a process in terms of what the situation was, what the outcome was, so that you come across really well. Like, it's very prepared would be my. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And Alyson, anything to add to this point?
I think it's just, as we're talking about, maintaining the job search as well. It's about scheduling your time as you would always do. I'm a big fan of scheduling time and stick to a routine. It might slow down a bit. As you say, there might not be so many opportunities out there, but schedule the time to do some of those activities, because, it's easy to say, oh, well, it's a nice sunny day, I'll go for a walk, instead of, spending, short bursts of time doing some of those really helpful activities. So, look at your week, look at where the gaps are, and schedule both some professional researching time with some personal time as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so our next point was lots of people leave it until September, so I think we've kind of touched on that really. Anything to add to that? I think we're done with that really.
Yeah.
Okay, workloads often ease a little over the summer, so you might find scheduling interviews easier. So Gill, to expand slightly on that.
Yeah, well, because in fact, I've just had a conversation with a client this morning who's saying it's actually a lot quieter in her work, and it's normally fairly frantic. But she was really pleased because she actually needed that time to catch up with her work. So if you're looking to build, say, for example, reconnect with some network contacts, or to actually speak to some people for some advice, this might be a really good time to do it, because there are less people at work, because many are on holiday. They're getting a less of an email load coming through, so they might actually open your email if you're sending it as well. And it may be a time of year when they've actually got time for a half-hour chat or catch-up with some useful advice. So I think that's something, and actually really to think through and to prepare for that discussion as well.
Definitely. I know, speaking to a recruiter friend of mine, Lee Jones, who's been on with us a couple of times, he always says this, that over the summer it's a great time to speak to recruiters because they are often quieter. There might be fewer jobs that they're actually trying to fill, but that means that their consultants have got more time to actually talk to you and get to know you. So actually really good time to try and build up that network of recruiters that could be there for you. So Alyson, anything to add on to this one?
No, I was just going to refer back to the session we did on informational interviews, Sarah. Really,
yes.
Well, and thinking about, as Gill has said, is connecting with your network and picking up maybe with a few people in the network and say, is there an opportunity, if you're not away, for us to have a quick half-hour chat, and and structuring some questions around using that time to investigate what it might be like to work in a different organisation, or what kind of people fit in that organisation, or what are the challenges, etc. So the informational interview session we did again will probably help if people want to go back and have a look at that one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll add that to the comments afterwards. But yes, that was the kind of identifying people that are working in the role that you would like to do in the future, and then just trying to have a chat to them. So it's not directly asking them for work, but it's that kind of information gathering piece. So yeah, that's a really great idea. Linda, anything you can add to this one?
I was really just to add on to what Gill was saying and yourself about the recruiters. It's that radar thing I was talking about earlier. It's a great way to sort of get yourself in front of people and you sell yourself to them so that they can sell you into organisations. So, just keeping on those.
Yeah. Okay. So I can see there are a fair few people watching. So if anyone has got any questions, please do ask them so that we can be. Oh, and one's just popped up now. Okay, so that was a great tip. So thank you for that, Mandy. So I think that was probably to do with the informational interviews because we get a little bit of a delay before we see the messages. But so that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so our next question was, what can you do over the summer to maintain your job search? So we have sort of touched on some of these things already, but Gill, anything else you could suggest here?
Yeah, I think it's just keeping up the basics, if you like. You've probably got, because it's things we happen a bit more slowly, gives you a bit more time to do it. It's also things like making sure you've got a really good draft cover letter. So we talked about the other things like the CV, talked about the elevator pitch, the cover letter. We've talked about the networking. But I also think, just as Alyson said, it is about having a schedule. And so it's having time for your job search, but perhaps it's also really good to also have time for free time, as Alyson says, some personal time at this time of year when the weather's better. So you can job search, but you can also enjoy the time that you've got as well. And the great thing is, I think, if you do get to talk to people like recruiters or people in your network, because they're slightly lighter workload for them, they may well be slightly more relaxed. So you'll have a more in-depth conversation too.
Yeah, absolutely. Alyson, anything to add there?
No, as I say, I'm a big fan of scheduling and scheduling your time, but setting yourself some goals around manageable activities. So be realistic about what you can achieve. So, when people set themselves a goal at the beginning of the week, you can't apply for 5 jobs because there probably aren't going to be 5 jobs there. But if you're going to put some time in your diary and going to say, I'm going to spend 2 hours researching, or I'm going to spend 2 hours reviewing my campaign, or I'm going to spend 2 hours talking to people in my network. So some manageable activities that you can achieve, because that's the thing of getting to the end of the week and feeling like you've done what you said you were going to do.
Excellent.
I think the other thing about in the summer is also using some of that downtime to your advantage. So, it might be an opportunity to pick up some of the things that you've wanted to do for a while but haven't had the opportunity. So maybe learning some new skills, or to say, looking at new ways of thinking, coming up with new ideas, or get some fresh ideas around some of the things you're interested in.
Great. Okay. I'm just going to put up some of the things that we talked about yesterday. I think we have covered most of them, but just to kind of go through as a checklist. So watching back sessions of these sessions. So Alyson just mentioned the informational interview ones, but we have had a huge range of topics. So we've got things about elevator pitches, CVs. We've got things about setting up your own business, interview prep. So there's all sorts there. And we have got a flyer actually, which has got all of those listed. So we will add that also so people can have a look at those. So rehearsing your elevator pitch. So you touched on this one, Gill, didn't you? So definitely a good time to maybe rewrite or have a couple of versions potentially, and then doing the rehearsing. So tips on rehearsing your elevator pitch, Gill?
Oh, absolutely. You must make sure you say it out loud. I have clients and they write it down, and it can be a beautiful piece of prose. But the thing is, half a page of A4 is actually quite a lot of speech. So one of the things is, and it's the beauty, you can either just rehearse it and talk to the dog and time yourself, or say it in front of a mirror, or probably a very effective way of doing it is using your phone to record yourself, or Zoom or anything like that, and play it back, because then you will actually hear the ums and ers. You can actually then perhaps also play it back or rehearse it in front of somebody else, because it can sound, if you're not careful your elevator, it can sound a bit like a shopping list. What I've done, what I've done, what I've done. But actually, it really needs to be about what you bring. Yes, what you've done, but what you contributed, the difference you made, and what you really enjoyed, what you really loved doing. Because then that brings an energy and an authenticity to it, rather than sounding like you're reading the shopping list or, not even as exciting as the weather forecast. So I think that rehearsal, because it doesn't have to be word perfect, it just has to sound very conversational. But you do have to know what's in there, and you do have to have thought about it so it comes across in this authentic and engaging way with that element of energy in it as well, and really showcases what you bring to an organisation.
Yeah, brilliant. Linda, have you got any experience of writing your own elevator pitch or
Yes,
kind of thing?
Well, what I was going to add on to that was that, with a lot of technology companies, fintech companies, if any of you is on, is that they will possibly ask for a video of you as part of your application process. So I think Gill makes a really good point about recording it on your phone, and keep doing it until you're happy with the way that you come across, because you never know when you might get asked to send one of those as part of your application. But yes, I have had to do that, and I think you've sort of got to get out of your own way sometimes when you do it, because you feel a bit silly. And I think that the only sort of tip I can say is keep doing it, because you want to try and come across as you, and not that you're reading a script either, because I held up my piece of paper like this next to the phone, and of course I'm constantly going between the two. So it's trying to narrow down some of those little things that you'll look back at and go, oh God, I can't believe I did that so many times, just so that it comes across a little bit more like you and not just about the video, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of practice. Practice makes perfect, or natural. Practice makes natural, I guess. Alyson, anything to add on the elevator pitch?
I think really it's, my question I often ask my clients is, how do you want to show up in the new world? And I think it's a little bit about, spending a bit of time, as Gill's already said, thinking about maybe refreshing your brand as to how do you want to come across, and ensuring that, it's not just about what you can do in terms of work. It's how do I get in there my like you say, my energy, my interests, my values, my motivators, my drivers, remembering you have a very short space of time in which to do that. So to come across as that very all-rounded but interesting pitch, it needs to have lots of different elements, and I think sometimes it needs a bit of time to think about the authenticity of your brand. So doing some of those exercises again on the 1080 portal, there are lots of really helpful development exercises around motivation and values and fit and interests and skills, so that you can talk quite freely about those in a very natural way.
I think, as I'd just add one thing, I think, as we all know, because we've all had to do video things, it always takes longer than you think it will. So do allow yourself plenty of time. Number one, to get used to with getting the camera in the right place, switching on and off. And always a little tip is switch it on, leave a bit of a gap, just count to 5, then start. Then when you finish it, count to 5, then finish. You can slip it into an edit facility and just clip off the ends, but that will really help. And you will have several iterations. So if you think you'll just get it done in an hour, that would be fantastic. But the reality for most of us who are just amateurs at this is really, I found I have to allow a couple of hours, the best part of half a day, if I'm doing something like that, before I get a product that I feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think at the beginning of the first lockdown, I think a few of us were asked to do videos for 1080, weren't we? And it was a 2 to 3 minute video. I think it took me all day because I just kept watching it back thinking, no, that's awful, that's rubbish. So yeah, definitely there's been a massive learning curve, I think, for everybody in video over this past year. So that's really good. And Alyson, I like what you said there about thinking about rebranding yourself. And that goes back to what we talked about last week on the first 90 days, doesn't it? In that you need to be really clear on what your objectives are in your new role. And if you know that you worked ridiculously long hours in your last role, you don't want to do that, then this is the chance to do that and kind of be confident about that right from the very start. So it's a great idea to get that into your elevator pitch as well. Okay, so the next one we had was about reviewing your connections on LinkedIn. So Gill, do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to? Or?
Yeah, well, please chip in. I think this is an ideal time where you've got time to actually look at your connections on LinkedIn. And it's not just your whole number of connections. I think it's actually looking at the ones which are relevant and to what you're going to be doing, and actually download your connections and work out from that who are the ones you need to reconnect with, who are the ones you're very connected to, that you can talk to. Because the reality is you're never quite sure which contact the next step is going to come from. And some of it is timing. Or we could say luck, but what is luck? It's where preparation meets opportunity. So this is an ideal time to actually go through, and you've got time now to actually perhaps send people messages, see how they are, set up a Zoom meeting, or if you're close enough, a face-to-face meeting with an actual person and an actual coffee as well. And actually, good to reconnect with people, see what you can do for them, but also just to build those contacts again, because when you get back into a job, your head's often down, as I call it, or up just looking at the screen, or down looking at the desk. And often these things go by the by.
Yeah, definitely. So to download your connections, you go into the settings area on LinkedIn, and you go to data privacy and give me my data or something like that. Click on the connections, and then that puts that all into a spreadsheet for you. And then what we tend to recommend to people is that you add some filtering criteria. So like Gill just said about how well do you know them, or when did you last connect? And it could be that you change those filters depending on the time you're at. So if you are looking for, say, a role in financial services, you could add that as a filter potentially. So identify your maybe top 10% of people and kind of focus on them to start with. That's definitely something we recommend, and really seems to help. So that's great. Okay, so taking a critical look at your CV, we've covered that. Booking appointments with recruiters, we've covered that also. Informational interviews, Alyson has spoken about that. And then sticking to your plan and be targeted. So we have covered that also. And then the next point was about resilience. So Alyson, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I think we've said about getting the balance right, and I think one of the balance is a word that I associate with resilience. Really, is keeping your activity levels going so that you don't stop, but getting that sense of perspective about what else is happening. The reason people don't get back to you is because they could be on holiday.
Yeah.
So it isn't about expecting immediate interviews, but the thing for me is keeping your energy levels up. Because resilience is about being adaptable and being flexible, and being able to flex with the change, and we've all had to do that over the last 18 months, and I think it's working on those sorts of skills as well, and it's just keeping your energy level. So if that means you are going to say, right, this afternoon I'm going to go for a walk because I want to have some downtime, then you should be balancing those things out.
Excellent. And Linda, I know you had some points on resilience yesterday when we spoke.
Yeah, so I think it's about trying not to get disheartened, because I think you go into this with great gusto and you're full of positivity because it's all going to go amazingly well and everyone's going to love you. And actually, then the effort of then having to try and do your network, apply for jobs, speak to people, attend interviews, and maybe get a few rejections, in fairly quick succession can knock you. And I've been through that process as well. And I think it's about, just taking stock, taking time out, like Alyson said. It's not about you and you're doing anything wrong. It's just you haven't found the right one yet. So I think it's about when you get to that stage where you're feeling a bit, what am I doing? Going to throw everything out the window. Then I think just take some time out, restock, and come back to it with that fresh gusto again. It can be a bit of a job trying to find a job sometimes. So making the time and keeping your energy up can be hard. So just be kind to yourself, through this time. And just another point about the network thing, all great points. And I think, when what happens sometimes is people fall off a cliff when they get really busy in a job. And I think it's also about trying to keep that radar thing going, even when you are in a job, with some of those key connections that you've got. Because I think that it becomes easier as time goes down the line, that you can just, if you kept connected with people and keep those relationships warm-ish, then you know, it just makes it easier sometimes to get back in contact with people to say, hi, it's me again, I'm looking for another job.
Yeah, definitely maintain that network. Yeah, and I think the point about taking a holiday is actually a really good point. So I had a client last year who springs to mind who was. I've never known anyone work so hard to get a new job, I have to say, and she did get the job that she wanted in the end, which was great. But she was exhausted over the summer because she just maintained that constant 8 hour a day looking for a job. And I did say to her, I think you need to actually take some time off, just take a week off, don't look. And she's like, well, I might miss something. And she was really worried about that. In the end, I think she took a few days off, but she did say she felt refreshed afterwards. But I guess if you've got people that are looking for jobs that are in that situation, I think it's really helpful for you to point out to them that actually a break might be a good opportunity. Yeah. Gill, anything to add to resilience?
No, I think your last point about taking a break is a really good idea, because when you take a break and you're away from it, that will be when you get your moment of insight. Because you won't have it when you've got your nose to the grindstone. That's not how our brains work. So the break will be really useful because you will get a bit of an aha moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. That's good. Very good. Okay, and this was something that you mentioned yesterday, Alyson, about using any downtime to your advantage. So brushing up on skills, learning something new, doing some volunteering. So do you want to talk a bit more about what you were saying yesterday?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is time to do something new, and again, it's about reinventing that interest in other areas in your life. And there are so many online courses now, either through things like LinkedIn Learning, or courses that aren't expensive. So you're not investing thousands of pounds in the next year of your life in learning something new. You could be doing short bursts of a couple of hours of something. Oh, I'm really interested in doing that, or even just brushing up on some of the basics. The Microsoft Office skills, the things that we might need to reinvent in our new roles going forward. And I think if there is the other thing about learning something new, again, that's something a part of resilience. It works really well is keeping our brains active and allowing us time to learn something new means that we're not stressing or necessarily worrying about other things as well. So lots of advantages to learning. And the volunteering, I think in particular, there are so many organisations out there looking for all sorts of volunteers. I use an organisation called Do It. And you've probably heard of Do It, and I mean they're looking for volunteers for everything from mentors to somebody to paint the next door neighbour's garage. There's lots of things that you could be doing which will give you that sense of value and purpose.
Brilliant. And not to mention any new transferable skills that you might pick up along the way. Gill, anything to add to that? I know you're really keen on volunteering.
Yeah, I think I would certainly agree with that, but I also think it keeps you connected with people. As well as the meaning and purpose. And human beings are very social animals, so we do need to be connected with people. And some of those sounds like it would, but not necessarily online as well. It might be, in person. So I think that's hugely important, because then you'll find especially if somebody who gets energy from people, because that meaning and purpose and perhaps that energy, when you do speak to people about your job search, you'll probably come across more energetically and enthused.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linda, anything to add to this one?
I think just on top of, the things that you said about brushing up on new skills, I think in your area of specialism, there are probably, latest thinking, new articles, about, so you're sort of keeping your saw sharpened, isn't it? Is that phrase in your own area of expertise, so that you can talk about that when you get all these interviews.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So Paul's saying a break is so important. Finding a job is a job in itself. So why would you not take some time off? So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay. So we had a question about how do you keep your network warm? So we've sort of talked about this loosely. But one of the things we said yesterday was that it is actually easier now to have casual meetups now that restrictions and things are loosening and the good weather. So Gill, anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think just take advantage of it while you can, and whilst perhaps it's a bit more relaxed, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's also thinking about, we've mentioned elevator pitches, but also sort of your positioning statement. So be very clear what you want to get out of that meeting, and practice, not necessarily talking about yourself, because that's not always the purpose of it, but practice kind of what do you want, what are you looking for, so that the person is very clear what that, that what your ask is in some ways.
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting statement to practice as well.
Yeah, that's good. So Paul's just had another comment here to say he's enjoyed the volunteering experience he's had this year. 2 weeks helping with COVID testing at my son's school gave me a real purpose. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's giving you some sort of purpose and feeling that you are helping people with something. Okay, so we will kind of finish now with our top tip to leave with. So Gill, do you want to start with your top tip?
Yeah, I think it's just keeping on going and keeping on being focused and connecting with people.
Yeah, excellent. And Alyson?
Yeah, I think mine's about maintaining your resilience. As we mentioned, self-care is the key to that. Self-care is a priority. It's not a luxury.
Okay, brilliant. And Linda?
I suppose it's just the little and often. It's just keep that PR thing I keep going on about. Little and often.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, ladies. It's good to see that we have had people watching, so hopefully it's been useful. And next week I will be back talking to David Mellor and Trevor Meriden. We're going to be talking about how to win new business when you're self-employed. So we've had a few self-employment sessions over the last few months and they've been really popular, so hopefully that will help people. Even if you're not looking for self-employment, I'm sure you'll get lots out of it, because no doubt we'll be talking about networking tips and things like that. So thank you everyone who has joined today, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.